So again, I want to look a little bit at what it is that characterises commercial map data, and I suppose to describe how things are the way they are, and it's really down to the constraints they operate under. If you are a Navtech or a Teleatlas, which would be the two main companies that produce map data for, say, vehicle navigation devices or for most web maps, you do have to concern yourself with issues of quality control. You're charging quite a lot of money for your data set, so you have a certain due diligence obligation to make sure that it's right. That takes time, and because it takes time, you are not going to be able to rush out a map today with the road that opened yesterday. You can't do it, and you probably shouldn't do it. You would very likely get sued. They are typically tailored to a need, and that need is usually vehicle navigation. And what that means is they are only just detailed enough for the application for which they are designed. Footpaths, cycle tracks, water features, mountain peaks may or may not be in those commercial data sets because they're probably not core for the main audience that's actually going to pay them for the map data. There is accountability, and this is a little bit like my first point about why it is that it takes so long to update errors. Even though the commercial map data providers do provide you with ways to feedback your knowledge as to where the errors are and what a correct version would look like, they can't just take your word for it. They will most likely want to send a surveyor down onto the ground, or at the very least, wait until a whole bunch of people assert the very same thing that you did, so that they can have some confidence that it's actually true. Vertical integration is a new and interesting phenomenon in the commercial map data space. Again, I mentioned Navtech and Teleatlas. Navtech is now owned by Nokia, and Teleatlas is now owned by TomTom. Nokia wasn't even a traditional navigation provider in what was a reasonably congested space for people like Garmin and Navigon and people like that. But of course, for mobile devices, maps have never been more important, and Nokia certainly realises that. Teleatlas has exploited the fact that they now own their own map data by providing a feedback channel, a back channel for customers to note what's wrong with the map. But again, as I said, notwithstanding the fact that they do that, many people are aware of very glaring errors, or at least time lags in bringing up to date with commercial maps. This is something that OpenStreetMap can do better. The data that they produce, as I said, is expensive. Might be expensive to you, but if it's not, it's being sponsored. Somebody is paying for that data. Likewise, as an end user, you may, if you are paying for it, you may pay several times for the same data. If you have a vehicle navigation device, if you have a walking device, if you've got a Nokia phone, because remember, you pay money for your Nokia phone, they are getting the money back somehow, and it might well be that for the same data set, you're actually being charged several times over. Similarly, derived works from those maps are typically very strongly controlled. You can't so readily go to, certainly as a consumer, you can't go buy a sat-nav device and say, well, that's all very nice, but I wish I had a detailed map of where I live, of my yard, of my driveway. You can't actually add to that, and if you could, they'd probably want to charge you a lot of money for it. As against that, OpenStreetMap data, and it's far from perfect, because we'll come to that. I've tried to show the rough with the smooth here. The maps are up to the minute. Where we have map data, there's no reason it can't be up to the minute. I can show you many examples of roads that have been open for a matter of weeks, which are already on the map. It never costs you any money just to use the data, though of course you do need to know what you're going to do with it. It might be that somebody who want to charge you money for help with that. There are gaps. There are gaps in OpenStreetMap. Those exist where nobody's actually gone at the data. Time will cure that, and indeed anybody with the resources and the will to do it can help. But it could well be that where you want to map that our data will be a little bit slack at the moment. That said, what OpenStreetMap lets you do, the tools that we have, and the level of flexibility you have as to what you map, it does give rise to very accurate and very detailed maps. Which, on the other hand, can be subject to errors due to bad mapping, because not everybody is a born mapper, and I've already identified the fact that absolutely anybody is free to go in and make changes. We get around that by trusting the fact that the community capitalised. is generally better, is generally doing a better job than no job at all, and that ultimately the community will make sure that the map, if it does get broken, will get fixed again quickly enough. And again, as I said, the map set is nearing completion in many countries. The reason I put completion in quotation marks is because it's very much a matter of definition. If all you want to do is to navigate vehicles around the major roads of the countryside, it's very easy to get completion on that level. However, if you think that you want to map individual trees and park benches like many of our German cousins do, that can take a little bit longer. But certainly, the completion I'm defining here is essentially something that's about as good as the commercial map data, or in many cases better. Just briefly, it was like most harebrained schemes thought up over some points. The original proof of concept was done with GPS track logs taken from bicycle couriers in London, which were overlaid on each other to produce something that looked quite like it. And a simple data model was then developed to actually turn it into something that could work like a map. And I won't dwell on this one, I'll get on to the fun stuff. This is an image of Berlin Zoo, extracted as of yesterday. I use this image in most presentations I do, but in fact it's even more detailed than last time I did it. To the left of the picture you can see a major train station. To the right of the image is the zoo itself. What you probably can't see from your distance is that each of those coloured areas is an animal house or an animal lake, and each of these names refers to an actual whatever animal is at home in that location. All of the footpaths are there. It's a level of mapping you typically don't get, certainly in online digital maps, and it's really nice to see. It's actually useful to. I've used the map of Berlin Zoo on a mobile device to help me navigate around there and find the penguins.